Okay, I'm Kristina Jackson. I'm a PBIS coordinator with the district. Before I became a coordinator, I was a classroom teacher for about 10 or 11 years.
And I'm DeGeorge. I'm also a PBIS coordinator for the district. Before that, I was a school psychologist for about 16 years.
So I want to give you a little bit of background before Kim is going to give you more details about how PBIS and restorative practice blend. So a little bit of background, of course, we're from Buffalo Public Schools. So Buffalo is the second largest city in New York State. We're the third poorest in the country, and our poverty level is about 30%. Most of you who are in this room kind of locally, you know this a little bit about us, but I just want to set the stage that this impacts our school, of course. Our community impacts our schools. So we have about 38 elementary schools, 17 high schools. We're a large urban district, approximately 34,000 students, and about 74% of our students are economically disadvantaged. Low graduation rates. So all the impacts of poverty, all the effects of poverty, of course, we feel in Buffalo Public Schools. And what does research says? Research says if you want to connect with students in large urban schools, you have to build relationships, okay? But that's across the board, whether you're in large urban schools or not, okay? We have to focus on building these relationships. Is everyone able to hear me? So we're diverse. As you know, restorative practices works well with children of color. Buffalo Public Schools have been cited by the state, as many other schools in our region, for disproportionality. All right. So this is our makeup. Needless to say, we have a large African American student base. So we started implementing PBIS in a cohort model. How many of you here are familiar with PBIS? Beautiful. PBIS means positive behavior interventions and supports. And it's about setting up a systems model. And I think Tim mentioned having a tiered approach. Okay? Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Tier 1, what do we do for all? Tier 2, what do we do for some? And Tier 3, what do we do for few? So we started implementing this in a cohort model, a few schools at a time, with the assistance of Erie One BOCES. With the help of Erie One BOCES, we had support with coach training as well as coaching our schools. So we also worked with BOCES to bring in national consultants, Kim Green, and also Laura Hamilton. Laura Hamilton would always have this saying about being unconsciously competent or unconsciously incompetent. All right, and so some of us, we just have the skills. We relate to students. We know that Joe, he has these skills. They're in him. But some of us have to be taught. And not only that, we have to set the stage in school. We know we don't have a way to teach kids social emotional skills. Maybe in health when they get to 7th grade, right? But we have to start doing it a little bit earlier. So having these circles infused within our classroom is a great way to do that. We started after learning about PBIS and the systems model, knowing that change takes time, right? 5 years for systems change. And also knowing that we need to blend this into all these other initiatives that we are doing. So we started blending our mental health conversations into this PBIS framework, as well as attendance. How do we blend it into a PBIS framework? And Kim is going to give you more detail about how restorative practices is blended into this 3-tiered model for us. So all of our schools, of course, are implementing PBIS at different levels. Okay, so how do we go in? How do we implement district-wide to get it across that we all need to do this, and we all need to do this in a 3-tiered model? We got some special funding from a federal MTSSB grant. MTSSB just means multi-tiered systems of support, so that's PBIS. Just the federal government wanted to give us another acronym to use. So we get a little bit more support for our 8 schools. Dr. Karestas, along with a community group, which is Citizen Action, they were very implemental in getting restorative practices and PBIS into our code of conduct. Also, Erie One BOCES helped with the rewrite of our code of conduct. So that was one of the first steps, getting it into policy for our district. The next thing, we also worked with Erie One BOCES and with the other regional BOCES to get a grant to get trainers. So now we have about 8 or 9 trainers in our district as part of the grant from the Department of Criminal Justice. And so we're able to start implementing at a much higher rate because we no longer work with Erie One BOCES with PBIS implementation, and we don't have that support for training and coaching. Now we have to build capacity within our schools, right? And Lise, Ms. Z is over there as well. She's one of our trainers. She's gonna help out this afternoon when we break into different groups and actually experience circles. So another part of working with the community, in partnership with the community, Erie County Restorative Justice Coalition plays a major part as well in implementation in schools and in our district. They've helped to train some tier 3 training with our SST staff. They've provided training and support at one school in particular, School 74, and they're providing training out in the community to community members. So it's very important to get the word out in your community. So as Tim mentioned, dipping your toe in the water, we had to do that. Coming from PBIS, we know, okay, you have to implement tier 1, and you want systems change, and you want to train whole school and to implement whole school. But sometimes you just got to start where you can. Okay, so we started just giving overviews, and we gave overviews to anybody who wanted us to come. But they were the right circles. We started giving overviews to our community partners, our SST, and the more and more people heard about it, the more they felt comfortable with this paradigm shift. Okay, and that's the first start. And then we started training teachers, and we adopted one school in particular, School 59, to focus on how can we implement this whole school. Okay, so you need a whole school model, but then you also need people to start experiencing it. And we taught a course, Kim and I, at the Teacher Center. And we had Julie and Kristen, who were part of the video, take the course with us. And they became our spokespeople. Okay? So even though Bennett isn't doing a whole school model, their children are experiencing it. And it's making a difference on such a small level. So when we talk about outcomes, the one school 59 that I mentioned as our pilot school, they trained maybe their whole school about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Okay. They said we're all implementing. The principal said, I want everyone to do circles in the morning. And they had maybe about 40 to 50% of their teachers implement and do circles in the morning. The following year, though, she put it into the schedule. In the schedule, every single morning, teachers are doing circles. They may not look all the same, but they have the same objective behind them. So with putting it into the schedule, that teacher improved buy-in, improved implementation. Now we have about 90%, 95% teachers implementing circles. With that, they receive a review from the state, and they received effective rating on their Tenet 5, which is their district comprehensive improvement plan, okay? Which is wonderful. We know, as if your administrators getting reviews from the state, they feel great about that. We also have anecdotal stories, of course. We were sitting in a circle ourselves and just visiting, and there was a 4th grade class, and they have circles every morning, and the one kid opened up and shared about violence in his home over the weekend. So naturally, the teacher went on, and this has been a class who've been doing this for a while, so they've had those relationships built. This student felt the trust, he knew, okay? So once the social worker talked to the students afterwards, that social worker actually built the student skills for that kid to be able to take circles home and have circles at home with his family. We also have stories about when substitutes come in. What do we do, right? The students said, no, we got this. We'll handle this circle. All right. We toyed with the idea of starting yet another team. So we started this RPAT, which is the Restorative Practice Action Team at School 53. And, 59, sorry, not 53. That was my old school, sorry. 59, we toyed with this idea because we already had a PBIS team. So we didn't want to start another team, but we did. And I'm so glad we did. Lise was the leader in the school. The social worker in the school who had the passion was the person who drove the team and drove implementation at its beginning stages. That's important because the need for the team kind of dissolved a little bit. But at the beginning, it was very important to have this team. As implementation went on, and this year, the counselor took the leading stage, and he's going around and he's asking people, do you need help? And the teachers are saying, no, this is going so well. We're seeing students open up, their willingness to share, and also students showing the leadership role. And also from our team, from our teacher course, we had a teacher in there that is a teacher at the STARS program, which is, they teach students with autism. She told so many stories of how the students are beginning to open up and how they're able to communicate. So we thought we would add that into some of our outcomes. But one of the last things I want to share from you, and I know we're a data-driven society, is yesterday, I put some data on Charles Drew. We have data from September through May, School 59, with their suspensions. They had a 38% decrease in short-term suspensions from last year to this year. In 2014 to 2015, they had 172 suspensions from September to May. And 2015, 2016, from September to May, they have 106. So it is making a difference already.
We were holding our breath on that one yesterday as Kristina pulled up the data. We're like, please. So we're really happy to be able to share that with you. So my job here is to talk about how to blend. So when we have been talking with our own district schools and with other districts vicariously through some folks on our panel here, and the planning committee, we were hearing things that schools were saying, no, we don't want to do restorative practice because we do PBIS. Or, well, we do want to do restorative practice, so we're going to stop this PBIS thing. And that just breaks our hearts, first of all, because we're PBIS at heart first, and secondly, because we've really come to see the value and the benefits that come from restorative practice, and we think that they really are aligned exceptionally well. So we just wanted to tell you that they are not exclusive of each other, that you can and should and want to use both. PBIS, as Kristina said, is the framework for how we make decisions about how we're going to instruct, how we're going to deliver services, what data we're going to look at, and how we're going to do that. And then restorative practice are the things that we're going to do to help us get there, are the interventions that we're going to put in some cases along the way. It's not the only intervention, but it's some of what we're going to do. So we talked about how we're going to do that blending of PBIS and restorative practices. So first we had to say, hey, are these things really related in any way? And of course they are. Both have focus on improving and managing student behavior. Both support development of positive relationships. And we hear that phrase a lot, well, you gotta have positive relationships, you gotta have positive relationships. And we know it to be true, but sometimes we don't really have the tools, the way to get there, to make it happen. It happens naturally for some people, and it's the hardest to happen with those who need it the most. And so the PBIS and restorative practice really gives us the tools to be able to make that happen for those who need it the most, both adults and students. And then they both involve that consistent sort of building level implementation. As we know, you can do PBIS in small pockets, you can do restorative practice in small pockets, but both are much more successful when we have school-wide implementation systems supporting those activities. Grounding in norms and values of the school. Both PBIS and restorative practice do that. Acknowledge the culture that surrounds that building, the community that surrounds that building. And then promote and strengthen the sense of belonging and ownership. And again, PBIS and restorative practice give us the tools to make that happen. If you Google school connectedness, the research there, and it's so highly, highly negatively, unfortunately, correlated with our dropout rate, right? So school connectedness is the single biggest factor in preventing dropout, and here are the tools to get us there. So here's what we sort of stole this model, and we said, hey, we really need to think about all the kinds of things that we do in our schools, and how are we tiering them? How are we what kinds of things are we doing for all? What's that tier 1 level look like to improve our social emotional learning, our mental health, our behavior support, and restorative practice? What are those things that we're going to do for some that aren't supported enough by the things that we're doing for all? And then what are the things that we're going to do for those few who need additional supports even beyond that? So that's really what the PBIS model is, and we just kind of adapted it and looked at all the different kinds of areas that we are covering and using in that kind of relationship. So what we did was we took this model, the triangle that you see on the left, and we decided as a district what practices for restorative practice we were going to put in at each of those tiers. So on the right-hand side, you see Buffalo's list of what we do in Buffalo at each of those tiers. And I'm really excited that you guys are going to get, for the afternoon, we're going to stop talking at you, because restorative practice is about doing with, right? And up until now, we've been talking at, which is necessary for some learning. But the afternoon is really going to be all about experiencing being in Circle, because there's no better way to understand and learn about Circle and believe and see the power of it than being in it. So we're going to give you the experience to try out really almost all of the practices that are listed on this triangle in the afternoon. So I won't talk about them too much right now. But how do we blend? How do we put this together on a nitty-gritty level? So that's the overarching. What's the nitty-gritty, right? So we have talked with schools about when they create their own circle norms, about combining that in with their school-wide expectations, their PBIS expectations, right? So if your PBIS expectations at school are be safe, be responsible, and be respectful, what does that look like in circle? What kinds of things do we want to see while we're in circle that lead towards others' safety, that leads toward respect and responsibility? When in PBIS, we use a matrix for our schools, and we say, hey, what does it look like to be safe when we're in the cafeteria? What does it look like to be responsible when we're in the cafeteria? So you take what we just put on this previous slide and you pop it right into your matrix, and you say, hey, these are the things that we say school-wide in our circle. Laura, you're cracking me up that you're taking pictures of this. You have the PowerPoint. Okay, you're more than welcome. We need to TMF, right? We know that if we teach, we get about 30% compliance. We teach our rules and expectations. We need to MF people. You need to MF people often. Did you know you need to MF your students? You really do. And of course by that I mean monitor and feedback, right? If you guys were thinking of something else, that's on you. So we need to teach, but we also need to monitor and feedback. So we're going to use that same model that we teach in PBIS. And we, did I say model? I meant monitor and feedback. We need to teach those behavioral lesson plans. And we need to monitor our circle behavior, and then we need to provide feedback. So we need to teach those circle norms in our circle. Hopefully we're developing them with our students. But we need to teach them, we need to talk about them, what it means to be in circle and what we expect. And then we need to monitor our students and see, and ourselves, because adults have the hardest time respecting the talking piece, can I just say right now? So we need to monitor that behavior and see if we're getting what we want out of that circle. And then we need to give feedback. How did we do? Did we hit the mark? Did we respect the things that we said we were going to respect? Did we do the things in circle that we all agreed to and committed to? And when we MF ourselves and our students, we get compliance rates that are up closer to 80 and 90%. So teaching only 30%, gotta MF. So we applied that same concept to using that in circle. So CHAMPS, if you've ever done CHAMPS with Randy Sprick's work, Safe and Civil Schools, he talks about what conversation looks like, what help looks like, what the activity is, movement and participation. So we thought, well, we can also CHAMP our circle, right? What does, sorry, yes?
So we teach in a district where students have a high number of ESL students.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's schools in Buffalo that also have the same issue.
Yes.
And one of the issues with these types of students is that they don't like to talk.
Yeah.
Right? And so is something with forcing the child, not necessarily forcing, but
yeah.
I'm sure the circumstances are forcing what it's doing. But is that
yeah, what we've
ESL student?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Was everybody able to hear that question? So he's asking about the needs of ESL students and being put in the circle, and how is that going for ESL students and being forced, but we're not forcing, as you are acknowledging, but being put in that situation. We actually have teachers who are doing this, of course, with ESL students. One of the teachers who went to our Teacher Center course is actually at our Newcomer Academy. So not only ESL students, but students literally straight new to the United States. And she was concerned. She's like, I don't know if this is going to work with them because of that issue. And I'll tell you, they have really, really embraced it. If they're only able to say one word, they say that. They can share what they're feeling with their fist of five, and they learn that pretty quick about how to do that. And they're learning from each other and sharing with each other, and it's been pretty incredible. So I actually think in the same way that worked for the students with autism, it gives them the structure and the social stability to be able to predict what's happening. So when they're taking a talking piece around the circle, they know when it's going to be their turn. They can be thinking about what they want to say and processing that information versus a question being asked and someone being called on. It really gives them that time to think and process, and they're really embracing it. It's actually a great strategy for that from our experience. Do you want to add anything to that? Lise, do you want to add anything to that?
I would just say, I know at 59 we had mixed classes. It wasn't just ESL or ELL, whatever the term is now. It was mixed, so that helped. They were welcomed in at their pace. You know, when they were ready, they came in, and we did a lot of physical activities that didn't require as much of the verbal communication. The other piece, and I don't know where the kids are coming from, but you know, in Buffalo on the west side, we have a lot of people coming from Africa, from Myanmar. You know, anyway, a lot of people coming from over that direction. And there is a bit of a tribal piece to some of the work that's being done, and I think for some of them, they are connecting back to that village community sense, so it may be helping them in that sense as well.
Thank you. So I'm just keeping an eye on our time here. I'm just going to share a couple other little things with you. So we use Randy Sprick's champs to give feedback about circle participation, never about a particular student, but how did we do as a whole. And we really only do this if necessary, right? If a circle is having a hard time coming together, and I'm just going to tell you, it was our 7th graders, and I'm sure nobody is surprised by that, right? So we had to build in a little extra structure in that circle process. They don't need it anymore because they're rocking and rolling, as Kristina said. When we were checking with our 7th and 8th graders, when Michael Finney was checking with the 7th and 8th grade teachers, they're like, yeah, we're good. We don't need help. We got it. They're doing fine with it. But to get started out, you might think about how to use those kinds of things. Think about your classroom problem-solving circles being things that you would do to resolve issues that might be class-wide as a Tier 2 type of strategy. Using circles and PBIS cool tools to address school-wide behavior. So you can look at your PBIS data, your behavioral data, and say, hey, looks like we're having a real problem with disrespect, or we're having a real problem with bullying going on school-wide. So we can say, hey, everybody in the school this week, during your circle, talk about that. Let's address that, right? So blending, again, our processes. We can predict and prevent, right? So if we've got things that we think might need to pre-correct, you've got an upcoming assembly or a field trip coming up, use your circle to talk about and plan and think about the behavior and get the kids involved in doing that and thinking about what we are going to be needing to think about when planning for that field trip or the assembly behavior. And using circles for the delivery of social emotional curriculum. And I think you have lots of resources given to you that you can find. And there's some great free resources online, some that you can find on Dr. Tom's website. We always refer to you as Dr. Tom. I hope that's okay. And also some great books that are out there that are in that resource list. Traditionally, we use our Tier 2 problem-solving team meeting to create those functional behavioral assessments and behavior intervention plans. But how about if there are some times when it might be appropriate to use that time, that meeting, to be holding a restorative conference instead. Sometimes it's a better match to resolve a behavioral issue with a restorative conference than a behavior plan. PBIS is about changing adult behavior, and guess what? So is restorative practice, right? We got to change the adult behavior. We need to TMF our staff. We need to give them feedback as well on implementation fidelity. Are they doing the things that we're asking them to do in restorative practice? And restorative conversation required maybe for every office discipline referral that gets written. Not a whole conference, but a conversation is some way that we would like to go. And we're going to talk about those restorative conversations in our afternoon session. And using circles with staff, we do a lot of training. Kristina and I are mostly with adults. And the adults say, oh my God, I needed this so much. and they say, can you come to our school and do it at a faculty meeting, because our whole faculty just needs this. They're like, we don't care about the kids right now, we need to heal ourselves, right? And so it's really important to build that in and build voice, not with just our students, but with our faculty as well. So there is a question there about how can restorative practices complement a tiered approach in your school. So we'll let you think about that one over lunch, and I'm going to hand this over to Sharon, I think. And we will have time for questions at the end of the day, so I know there may be questions, and probably a lot of what you're maybe thinking of asking is going to be answered in our afternoon sessions as well. Thank you.